things, right? Today, we are going to work on how you can plan and leverage upcoming giving moments using a resource mobilization campaign. And as fundraisers, your individual giving strategy might be year-long, and that makes total sense. However, if you are looking at leveraging giving moments, one of the most effective ways to do this is to run a campaign. And you don't have to think of something elaborate and complex and highly produced when you think of the word campaign. A campaign just means you are raising a very specific amount of money for a very specific purpose. And it has a very clear goal with a start date and an end date. And campaigns are a great way to engage with your community because it has a clear goal, clear call to action, and spans across a specific period of time, right? It's also able to kind of evoke emotional response amongst the community. And most campaigns also have a deadline, which creates a sense of urgency. And running a campaign can be a lot of work, but if done well, it's also very effective to help you mobilize the resources that you need. And the most important step is to take the time to plan and to set your goal. So if you want to run a resource mobilization campaign or leverage an upcoming giving moment in the next 2 to 4 months, you need to start planning now. And what our research shows is that campaigns that have a goal and a plan of action actually have a higher likelihood of success than those that don't. So the first step in this process is to set your goals. So I have a question for you. And I'm sure most of you have already heard about SMART goals. SMART goals help in making sure your goal is specific, measurable, aspirational, relevant, and time-bound. Specific here means the goal has to have something specific that it's trying to achieve. So it can't be just raising money or getting new donors. The question would be how much money and for what will help making the goal a lot more specific. Measurable, because unless a goal is measurable, you will not know whether you've reached it or not. And you'll also need a number or an indicator attached to your goal so that at specific milestones through the campaign, you know how well you are doing. And at the end of the campaign, you can measure and see, okay, did I reach my goal? Was this campaign even worth it? What did I learn from my campaign? And I can plan better for my next campaign. Aspirational, I would say you need the goals to be realistic for your team. However, it should also be exciting enough for your team to feel like they want to be a part of it, right? So aspirational but realistic is always exciting for people to be a part of. Relevant, so is the goal relevant for your project and for your community? Make the goal something that's easy for your community to relate to. And relevant really depends on your organization and your organization's bandwidth and the work that you're doing. The next is time-bound. Always have a deadline for your campaign. This actually helps create a sense of urgency and push people to take action as opposed to a goal that has no deadline. And when you're leveraging a giving moment, the giving moment already has a deadline. So that's a great way to kind of tie in your campaign with a giving moment's artificial deadline. Now let's take one goal that I don't know if any of you put raise more money for our project in the goal, but somebody put reach new donors, right? So say your goal is raise more money for your project. How do you convert this into a SMART goal? To make the goal specific, let's say that 5 lakh rupees, just for example's sake, is used to purchase 200 chairs for a classroom, right? So the goal is already measurable, which is great. And if you are able to raise 5 lakhs and purchase 200 chairs, you know your campaign was a success. But is this goal aspirational? Does it feel too easy? Or does it excite you and your team, maybe even to keep you up at night, right? This is something for each person to decide for themselves. Now let's make the goal also time-bound. So raise 5 lakh rupees to purchase 200 chairs for the classroom by December 31st. This creates that sense of urgency and helps members of your community know that they need to actually take action soon. There's a second example also put in here, which is a SMART goal. Engage our volunteers to raise 10 lakh rupees. From 100 donors between October 1st and the 28th of November, 2023. So those are both ways in which you can think of converting your broad goal into SMART goal. So whatever it is that your goal is, can I make it specific, measurable, aspirational, relevant, and time-bound is something for you to think about. Okay. Now, I'm still waiting for the day when we can all post our fundraising appeals on the internet, go to sleep, wake up the next day with a whole lot of new donations and donors. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, right? So planning is still very key to a successful campaign. And like one of the second most important things to do for your campaign is to plan, and we'll get into that, right? But just to remember that your goal does not necessarily have to be around raising money. It can be a lot more. It can be very different from just raising money. It can be getting new volunteers. It can be just improving your skills in online fundraising. Somebody said popularizing your organization. It can be to increase your individual supporter base. Your goal can be something that has nothing to do with money as well. So I've put in some examples of broad goals here and how they can be converted into SMART goals, how you can create some actions around those goals, how to reach those goals, and how we will kind of measure the success of those goals. So I'll share the slide deck as well with you. So you have this as just a reference, but this is some way to think about different types of goals for your campaign. So like I said, right, I'm still waiting for that day when, we don't have to do too much planning. We just put up our appeal on the internet and donors come in and make donations, but we're not there yet. So planning is still very, very key. And it's actually the second most important thing to do when you're thinking about preparing for a upcoming giving moment. And we ideally need to start planning now so that you have enough time for, if you are looking at leveraging the October-November season. All right, so I'm hoping a lot of you have your SMART goals in place. Even if you've not shared it, it's fine. As long as you have it and it's helpful for you, that's great. When you're thinking about your SMART goals and when you're trying to start the planning of your campaign, one of the things that you can do is to create sub-goals. You don't have to do this. This is just a tip that you can think about to make your work a little easier. So take that SMART goal. Say let's take the SMART goal of raising 10 lakh rupees to buy 200 shares, right? If we were to break that into sub-goals, I've done that here. It's a little more than 10 lakhs just to give us some buffer. But I would do something like raise 3 lakhs from 5 HNI donors, raise 3 lakhs from diaspora donors. That's, basically people of Indian origin living outside of India on Giving Tuesday the day. Or I would say raise 2 lakhs by converting my 1,000 rupee donors into 2,000 rupee donors, requesting them to basically up their donation this year. Or I would raise 5 lakhs from 5 advocates, each of them raising 1 lakh. Or maybe I want to experiment with social media. So I say 50,000 from first-time donors through social media, keeping that target a little lower because I'm experimenting with it. Now, when you break that bigger 10 lakh goal, your goal might be even larger than that, right? When you take that goal and break it down into these sub-goals, it actually becomes a lot more chewable and easier to digest and easier to plan. So I'd like to take a couple of minutes to see if you'd like to take your main goal and see how you can convert it into 2 to 3 or 4 to 5 sub-goals. We won't go into the full activity, but I'd really encourage you when you go back to your work to think about the sub-goals, what actions you might undertake to reach each of those sub-goals, when you would do these activities, what's the internal deadline, and who in your team would support you in doing that. So you can see the grid here also has those. So you can copy this if it's helpful for you. And you can use this to kind of think through the sub-goals activity, person's response, and timeline, which is very important. So let's take 5 minutes to just at least make that grid so we can go into the next step. Anybody has any questions at this point?
I have one question.
Sure. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's Austin. I'm from the Kurum Foundation. We're a Delhi NCR-based arts-led education organization. So,
hi,
Austin. Thanks for conducting this. This is very helpful. One question I had was, we received like conflicting information from other webinars that we've been part of, where we've basically been told not to spam on social media. So if we're doing, I saw one of the sub goals was like a daily post, and then I'm also that you'd mentioned there. So I'm just wondering, how how do you strike the balance between obviously needing to reach out to potential donors and not kind of becoming a bother in a way? I mean, I also think the same way when we're sending out our MailChimp sort
Yeah.
of mailers and everything. What's that balance look like?
Great question, Austin. And there's a lot that I can share on this, and there's lots of resources on the Giving Tuesday website as well on this topic. But the most non-invasive way of reaching out to donors is actually social media. If you're sending a WhatsApp message every single day, that might be a bit too much. But if it's on Instagram or Facebook, and it all depends on whether it's practical for you or not. Do you have the bandwidth to actually do this? And is it going to get you the returns that you want? Or are you just doing this to experiment and see if it's working for you? So really, Instagram and Facebook are pretty non-intrusive in that sense. However, WhatsApp is the most intrusive. Phone calls would be intrusive. So I would say strike a balance between intrusive versus non-intrusive. And the other piece is that I'll talk about this at the end as well, but on an average, and this is actually from MailChimp, I believe the data is from MailChimp. So it's an average individual has about 5 to 7 nonprofit newsletters that it's subscribed to. That's it. But they've subscribed to like a million other marketing products, services, etc. Right? So it's 5 to 7 nonprofits. And even for general marketing, it takes like 21 touch points to convert someone. And in many cases, our emails get lost in somebody's inbox and they're probably not seeing it. So if you're running a campaign, which is very time bound, I don't think it's spamming. But if you're doing it every single day for the full year, that might feel like spamming. I would say use the campaign. If you have a specific goal around raising funds, then use the campaign to raise funds and use the rest of the year to engage with that person in non-financial ways. So don't ask for money the entire year, but engage with them in other ways. Just say thank you on other days. Sorry, it's a long answer to your question, but honestly, Instagram and Facebook are the most non-intrusive ways to engage. But I would say it's different for different organizations. So you can also test and see what works best for you. I hope that answered your question in some way, Austin. Oh, okay, great.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
All right. So we'll just go ahead, and I'm hoping that you have kind of thought through your sub goals and activities, etc. And again, these sub goals that I shared here, you don't have to consider this as Bible. This is just a sample. And it's just to show you an idea of how you can create sub goals and activities. You don't have to do the activities that are put in here. This is just a reference and a template for you to kind of look at as reference. All right. So then once we have the sub goals and the activities and the team that's going to be able to help you out, we move into this third step, which is getting your story straight, right? And taking your campaign to the world. Now, can you guess how much time a potential donor spends on a fundraising campaign page before moving to the next page or going further or deciding to make a donation to you? Anybody? You can unmute or put into the chat box. How much time do you think a donor spends before they actually like move? Look at your own behavior on social media. 1 minute, okay? Less than 30 seconds. Yeah. It's getting shorter and shorter as you think of your own behavior. 3 seconds. Okay. Okay, yeah, you're close. So it's 4.2 seconds, and this is data based from Global Giving's fundraising pages. It could be different on different pages, but it's giving you a good average. And this is something to keep in mind when you're creating your online presence and your online page as well, right? That's the attention span of people these days. And always think about your own behavior whenever you're kind of thinking about the audience as well. And just to say that when you're running a campaign, you can do it on your own website, right? You can absolutely do it on your own website. You can have a fundraising page or whatever it is that you're asking for, whether it's getting new volunteers, you can do it on your own website. You can use social media and email to kind of amplify that. Or you can leverage a platform that already exists, which may have some additional features that you can leverage instead of creating it on your own. So if your campaign is about getting new volunteers to give their time, talent, you can even consider like talking to like a volunteer management organization, which may be able to help you. or you can simply do it on your own website. There are so many different options, right? Now, once you put all of the information on, say, a fundraising page, it would look something like this. And it would look slightly different depending on the platform that you're using. But what I wanted to highlight here was that the project title is the first thing that anybody will see about your project. And this will determine whether they keep reading and continue to stay to donate. So it's important that you have a project title that actually reflects the work that you do. So keep it short, clear, but also descriptive. And this is also what gets pulled up on Google when people are using keywords on search engines in Google. So basically, your title should ideally convey 4 things. Who is your project helping? In this case, it's village children. That's what's written here. Who is your project helping? Second is, how are you benefiting them? Here it's providing education. Third is, how many people is this particular project helping? In this case, it's 40. And fourth question is, where is your project based? Here it says Bodh Gaya, right? So try and think about how you can answer these 4 questions in the title, because that will really convey the work that you're doing in a very, very short, crisp manner. So people don't have to read long emails or really lengthy summaries and project pages, because a lot of people actually don't read a lot. Now, similarly, you can look at this example from Give. It seems to, again, answer all the required questions except one. What is that one question that you think needs to be answered here, that you may want to know more about before you actually make a donation? Anyone? What could be missing here? What do you feel like is missing here?
Where is it happening?
Where? Yeah. I mean, as a donor, I would think of where is this happening, because that actually makes a difference in my mind as an individual. So these are like 4 simple things to keep in mind when you are, yes, great, Arvind, location. These are some 4 simple questions that you can keep in mind when you are thinking of how to create your project title. Because remember, that's the first thing that a person sees. Now, the next thing that a person might see is your photo, right? The main photo and the other photos in the project page. Now, photos grab the attention of potential donors and basically help them understand your organization, the work that you're doing, and the community that you're serving. So a couple of things to keep in mind is try and have positive, empowering images. What I've seen is, I mean, again, data shows, I don't know if this works for everyone. Again, experiment and see. But when I was at Global Giving, what we saw is that single images of single person making eye contact tends to work better, but that may not be the case always. We've seen more clicks on those images. And one thing I would say is, before you put up an image, and I'm sure all of you follow this already, is think about positive, empowering images, and think about putting yourself in the shoes of that person in that image and see, would I like to be portrayed in this manner on the internet? So that's like an ethical check I always do in my mind before I put up a picture is, am I okay to be portrayed like this? And I think that'll really help you say whether this is a good image to use on. Then the next piece is, of course, the project summary. And then, think about the challenge, solution, long-term impact, all short, crisp passages, because this is not a grant proposal. It's just a page on the internet and you're trying to reach everyday givers who may not even know anything about the social sector. Now, many fundraising platforms will have different templates, so you can stick to those templates as well. But the most important piece is the summary. Like I said, a lot of people will see the title, the image, the summary, and won't read beyond that. So that summary is very, very important. And what you need to try and answer in the summary are the things that you answered in the title. That's who you're helping, where you're doing it, what and how you're doing it, and the why. Why is important when you're thinking about the summary. There's an example here. This is from an organization called Seva Mandir. And their project is to provide support and rehabilitation, counseling services, legal aid, medical and psychological care, and a lot more to women suffering from violence and harassment in rural India, especially Udaipur. Now, this summary actually answers all of the questions, right? Who, where, what, and how, and the why. It's actually starting with the why. And it's so crisp, it's so short that most people will be able to read through it really quickly. Now, I think beyond these practical things, it's about putting yourself in the shoes of the donor also, who doesn't know anything about your organization, anything about the work that you're doing, or they don't even have the same passion that you may have at this point of time. Put yourself in those shoes, and in that person's shoe when you're basically writing it out. Now, on most platforms, if you've already written a project page or a fundraising page like this, you may be able to edit it at any point. So if you have a page already, just consider going back and checking if the summary answers these questions. And if you're starting from scratch, these are some good points to keep in mind as well. Okay. Now that we've got our fundraising page or volunteer request page, depending on what it is that you're running your campaign for, the next step is to really map out your network. And a common misconception about community-based resource mobilization or crowdfunding is that a crowd will come and join you. But that's actually not the case. It's about getting your crowd to work for you. How can you use the network that you have to expand outwards and reach new networks? And we'll talk a little bit about that and do some activity as well. Has anyone seen this image or know where it's from? Yes, Ahmad, I see you unmuted.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, this is a very, very old image. That's probably why you've not seen it. So it's actually from LinkedIn. LinkedIn used to have an interesting feature where you can make a network map of all your contacts. And how it works is basically it assigns colors based on how those people are related to you. So, pink would be your school friends, or blue could be your college friends. So they are all basically interconnected. And you see like how different colors represent different networks that you're a part of. So LinkedIn doesn't have this anymore, but we can take this as an inspiration when we're thinking about our network and our organization's network. And what's interesting to note is that everyone's network will look different, right? Even if we are from the same organization, our network will look different because our personal networks are so much more. So the first step to mapping your network is identifying who is in your network, who is in your crowd. And when you begin this process, you'll quickly realize that you belong to a lot of different networks, both formal and informal. And your network is actually bigger than you think. So your friends, your family, all great answers in the chat box. They are all part of your immediate network, right? But when you think when you're not actually strategically thinking about it. So let's think about your organization's network. There could be board members who are part of your network, local business owners, and I'm not talking about MNCs. I'm talking about that bakery shop right next to your office, that shoe shop which is right next to your project location, maybe Istriwala who is near, one of the field locations. They're all people who are part of your network. Then you can think about diaspora communities. So Indians living outside of India, if you do have FCRA, that's also part of your network, right? Leaders in the sector, alumni from your program, religious institutions in your locality, they are all part of your network. And one of the simple ways in which I like to think about our network is in the form of these in the form of these concentric circles, right? Your first circle is basically your primary group. And those are people that you can reach out to personally today, and it wouldn't be strange. So you can reach out to them on WhatsApp or a call. So it's your friends, your current staff, maybe your current board members, volunteers, former employees, corporate supporters. All of them are in your first primary network. They're already in your middle circle. Then there's a secondary circle outside of that. These are people you could reach out to, but it may need a slightly formal or introduction or a reintroduction, maybe through your primary network, right? So secondary network you can reach out to, but you're not connected to them right now. The tertiary network is people that you should or could know that could be beneficial for the campaign that you're running or for your organization overall, but it might need a larger introduction, or maybe you need to host a networking event, or you need to ask somebody who can connect you there who's not in your secondary network at the moment. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and this is just to give you a sense of how to think about your network when you start mapping out your network. This is another way to think about your network map. You can use grids. This is a freely available version on the Global Giving website. You can go in and download it from there as well if you're interested in using this format. But when you start creating your network map, don't focus only on people who can be donors, right? Not everyone in your network or crowd will be a donor, and that is totally okay. Your goal with the network map exercise is to just put down a full list of people in your network, and then we'll see what each person can give or how each person wants to give, because everyone has something that they can offer to you, your organization, or at least to your campaign. And when you think of what people can offer, you can use what we call at Giving Tuesday the 4 T's of giving. Like, people can give their time, talent, or expertise. That's basically things or money, or their voice through testimony. And then there's also people who can give you contacts. For example, maybe a person in your network is part of an HR network and can make connections for you. Or a person who has influence, right? Like a CEO of a company that you're connected to, or a local government body representative, or a social media influencer who actually has influence and can support you in your campaign through influence.